think it is.
I don't know. I don't think it asked me for consent.
Okay,
No, it was just suggesting that you do so.
Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you. We're starting a few minutes late, but we're all here now. So thanks for coming to the Dalten Collective Weekly Hangout. We are bumping around between different platforms at the moment, but I think we're going to get this sorted out at least soonish. To begin, I've got a quick presentation I just wanted to go through, and then we've got hopefully we've got some demos that we can take a look at. So let's get right into it. Actually, what I want to do here is share a Chrome tab, because that will be much better. Okay, and then hopefully you can, oops, I think that just turned it off, right?
Yeah, we saw it for a second there.
Okay. And then here we go. All right, so why are we here? What's the hypothesis? It's still that groups of people organizing on the internet have some sort of advantage over those that are just organizing in either meat space or just the internet. In this case, we're organizing in a way that is for profit, but where people and the community comes first. So people are first, the money is second, but it's also very important that we do this on our own terms with as much agency and sovereignty as possible, as clearly defined by our struggles to get a meeting going just this week. So this can be kind of broken down into some three basic parts: fellowship, sustainability, and sovereignty. The fellowship part is where we come together as a group of humans, where we support each other in multiple different ways, in a way that is sustainable, meaning that we have enough resources to keep ourselves alive and keep a roof over our heads, food on our table. This is a for-profit enterprise. The way it differs from other for-profit enterprises is that they are more mission-driven than the Dalten Collective, which is to say that if you're not part of the mission, then you are not part of the organization. You're out. And that's not the way we run things. Here, it's more like the people, for the most part, stay the same, but the things that we do change. And I was thinking about what this another analogies are to sort of these kinds of models, and it's kind of like a guild, from the let's call it from the 1000 AD to 1700. The height of this sort of organization would be where somebody with starting out in life in young adulthood has a lot of energy and a lot of time, and they either apprentice with somebody who's been doing that skill for some period of time, and then slowly work their way up into a master position of which they are an expert in that particular field. So I kind of see Dalten working similar to this sort of model, where the uninitiated, or the people that are coming in or interested in Dalten, are bringing their time and their effort and their enthusiasm, and over a process of time become more and more proficient in it's some particular skill or project or some other set that we will then later define. So one practical way we could think about this is that Dalten is something for life. It's a membership in a group, but a team is something more like a guild, or I should say it's specific to a particular thing that it does. So it is mission driven, and if you are not part of that mission, you don't stay on the team. And this would be things that would be done for profit. Another way to look at this is kind of like a small town. So I really liked this image of a small town. I think it's probably in Colorado somewhere. It might even be Aspen, actually. But I think of Dalten as being a place where the people who make it run, the people who make it a nice place to live, actually own the underlying infrastructure. And that's different in the sense of a small town. Like, the mayor doesn't own anything. It's an elected position. But we're not in that sort of framework. In the framework that we are in, maybe the people who live in the small town are customers. It's a nice place to be, you trust and you like the people that are creating the experience for you. But unlike an actual town, it's very easy for a customer to go someplace else and take their information and their data with them. And that's part of what Urbit is all about. And so these are some of the ideas that I've been kind of walking through in my head today with regards to what it is that we're here for and what we're doing. So that's the quick presentation that I had, and now I'm very excited to look at some stuff that some people have been working on. So I know Rabsif, you've been hacking, and then also Sarpin, you've been doing some cool stuff too. So could you share with us some of the stuff you've been working on over the last several weeks? Eric, let's start with you first.
Okay, it'll be a good ramp up in the impressiveness as we move into Sarpin then. So I think it's probably a good decision. Let me arrange my windows here. And present. Screen. This one. Okay, so I have been working on something for the hackathon. It is showing now. You see in my screen here?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is the tile I've been working on. It's hideous right now, but it works, and that's the important part for me. It is able to check your base hash, your home hash. It counts your uptime in minutes, and it will tell you how many lives and rifts you've been through. And this all works right now, and I'm very pleased with that after having gotten some great input from Sarpin on how I might be able to effectuate this. So thank you for that. But yeah, it's counting up as we sit here. And you'll see that in the background, it's running a little check every minute or so to make sure you've been online. If you come offline, it determines that you have been away longer than the last poke was affording. So it checks every minute. If the current now bowl is further away than a minute from the last time that it set a minute timer, it will say that you've been offline and it will reset your counter. So I really love that part. And it'll do it if you bend too. Like if you get an update, it'll say you've been offline for a little while. The next goal I have is to get this to work with someone else's ship. So I'd like to be able to either send a hi and see how long it takes to receive the response back from hi, or at the very minimum, poke someone else's instance of this app and get their response back from that. And that's what I got.
That's pretty cool.
Thanks.
So I kind of see like this is like basic information you might want to know about your ship. How did you well you walked through some like how to get the timers, but where's the timer running?
The timer is running on a poke. So what I do is I use Arvo to send a wait to Ben of a specific time. On a NIT, it's 1 second, but in other instances, where are they? It's on this response to poke. Yeah, it sets a minute wait timer. And so then when the wait timer goes off and Arvo, I guess Ben sends a message back to this going, hey, wake. Then on wake, it reads this arm. Where's wake here? On poke. Oh, wait, it's on Arvo. Yeah, so on Arvo in the wake section, it checks first to see if the time is further along than it thinks it should be, in which case it sets your uptime back to 0 and it lets you know you've been offline. I'm going to take out a lot of this messaging. This is just to like be able to see it in the client so that I know that something's happening. But it sets your uptime back to 0. It checks your base hash and your home hash, and then it pokes itself again in the same way. And the same thing is true if you've been online for the appropriate amount of time. It pokes itself again. And actually, this needs to be minute 1. There we go. But yeah, that's how it works.
And then I could I could see that maybe this is something you might want to make it accessible to either the wider internet or some other place where you could display your statistics.
Right, like a star. Like, so if you're running a star and you want to say, look at our consistent uptime and look how we have the most recent hash or what have you, you should be able to do that using something like this.
Yeah. So you could do that. Well, yeah, probably both, right? From internal to Urbit, meaning somebody could just look at some page in Urbit for the star statistics, but also just on the hosting a static page or something.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing you'd have to do to send this information out is write an arm that on each poke, when it decides how long you've been up, it sends that as like a JSON object to some other site, or it sends it as a HTTP response to something else, you know?
Oh yeah, or an API.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. No, I'm not good enough to code that, but I know that you could do it.
And then what the further step you wanted to take is to do this sort of network style. So like I could derive statistics about you regardless of what it is that you've installed, right?
That's what I'd like to do. Yeah. And at the minimum, what I want to do is see just pure latency between two ships. Like if that's all I can roll out by Monday, then that's all I can roll out by Monday. But what I'd like to do is have it so you can do that, plus when you receive back from them a response packet, you also get their state. So you can go, it took you 10 seconds to respond to this person, and they have been up for this amount of time, and they have been so on and so forth. Does that make sense?
Totally. Have you been able to figure out how to find the base hash of some other ship?
Well, so as long as they're running this app, you should be able to get it from them. But no, I haven't. I don't know if you can. If you can.
Yeah.
I suppose you probably can if you work with Hood, but
I don't believe there's actually a way to ask someone else what their base hash is.
So this is awesome.
That seems like a security problem, potentially.
Well, yeah, fair, for sure.
Okay, fair enough. But also, it's like something I would want to know if I'm syncing from, like if there's an existing relationship, like if I'm syncing from my, whatever galaxy or star, sure. I want to know if they've got the reason, because I can change. I can just like, okay, well, if you don't got it, I'll go somewhere else.
I think it's if you have access to a path on Clay, then like you can probably, I think you can get the hash, because like the hash is just one of the different scry cares, right? Or like read cares. And so if you just like, when you like request, it would be like a warp or like a wart for the remote request. I forget. But like, I think if it's like you have permission to read it, basically, then like you can probably get the hash.
Okay. So that might be something to look into, Rabsif, is to, so how do I phrase this? So if there is a place to put permissions, your app might be able to set those permissions. And then like, so I could request access, in which you can deny or approve. And then if you accept it, then I can see your base. And if not, then I can't. And that might be,
that'd be cool.
A way to maybe tighten it up a bit.
Yeah, so you're not just leaking all of your information to everyone. No, that would be cool. I like that idea.
Yep.
Have you seen Rabsef where the all the types are defined for like all of the different like moves for all of the different veins? Like it's always like, it's like task able, it's task cool able cool vein name is like the path for it when you like try to use it, but it's like I could maybe screen share. Oh, you are, but like it's but it's in like you can see like it's like with like with Bane it's like weight, right? And then the other ones, like you get a weight task is in the task, and then you'd have a wake as like the gift, Like they're both like Bucksen like tagged unions. But like they're defined for every vein inside of Zeus. And then I think from there you'd find like the right clay. Right. I think it's also in the docs, but like I think there's some clay tasks and gifts that are like not up to date.
Okay. I'll give it a look in Zeus. I've tried to parse some of Zeus, but to try and stay afloat on this project, I kind of cribbed a lot of this and just packed it together.
Yeah, definitely. Like I understand like the sort of like production oriented race to the bottom, you know.
Right.
I've got some like personal experience with that.
Cool. Well, thanks for taking a look. Should we look at Sarpens? Anyone? Yeah. All right.
Unless there's any other questions.
No, I mean I really like this though. Like I want to see like it sort of like expanded, and you know, I'm very open to like working and like collaborating on like the expansion of like what are like the suite of like information and like actions and like blah 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 that like a star would need, sort of in a way that's like more user friendly form of star maintenance and so forth.
I think that'd be awesome. We should do that.
Meher, did you have a question?
Yeah, really cool demo, Eric. I had more of a conceptual question. So I mean, you know, like in the proof of stake universe, what's really interesting is you have validator uptime records. So you can go to a website such as hubble.figment.network, and you can go and see how much each validator has been up for on nearly all proof of stake networks. And that's pretty cool, right? Like you can just go here and like you can get a sense of what each validator is like, and validators can create like a public reputation using this tool. So yeah, this one exactly. So you can see that these validators have 100% uptime. And this is fundamentally possible because these validators are signing on a blockchain, and this tool can basically scrape that chain and give you an uptime record. So, looking at your demo, the curiosity I had was like, could we have like a like a Dalten blockchain, and all of the orbit stars can basically they sign up to the Dalten blockchain, and they get like an account or something, or they get some sort of hook on the blockchain, and then they have to sign a message and like broadcast it to the blockchain once every 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever. And so you can see all the stars signing these messages on the blockchain, and when a star is down, you don't see their message. And so that blockchain is basically like a set of public uptime records for any star that wants to prove its uptime record. And then anybody can build an explorer like this, and you can search for a star you're looking to join or federate under, or galaxy you're looking to federate under, and you can see what their uptime records are like, something like that.
So everything is signed in Urbit, meaning all the messages. So in that sense, it's sort of like, well, it is an append-only ledger. Urbit is, it's a stack of events that are signed events, but it's personal as opposed to public. But they are signed, so there is a ledger currently. So the key about the blockchain part is the consensus, right? What kind of consensus is important? So if we wanted to do something like a federated attestation of something, like this signature was posted, or I have a record of it. That's kind of blockchain like, I guess, but not necessarily. I don't know if you'd need one since it's signed. I guess the only other issue would be time. Like when did it happen? And that would be maybe the thing that the Federation would, attest to, as opposed to the actual signature. I mean, the signature is important, but everything's already signed. But that is cool, and we could potentially do something pretty lightweight too, or even just like, it's kind of like a text file. I mean, yeah. We don't need it. I don't necessarily know if we need a lot of fancy consensus on top of it, but maybe it's just easier to use whatever's built.
Yeah, I don't know enough about Orbit, say if blockchain makes sense or not, but it's basically like ultimately you want like this data structure to which any star can write.
Yeah.
Right. No matter how you implement that, it is blockchain, whether it's some kind of eventually consistent DAG or scuttlebutt, or maybe there's something that's more suited to Orbit. You want like a public write-only data structure where stars can write, and what you need is probably like the stars must sign the latest Bitcoin hash or something. Like you need to have some information that was only generated after a certain point in time that the star must sign.
Mm-hmm.
And then you need like a public record, and like the stars can basically keep signing once every 10 minutes, and it creates uptime records for all of them.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
I like it.
All right, Sarpin, are you ready?
Oh, I was gonna comment.
Please do. Yeah, keep going.
I like during the contributor call last week. I remember Jose asked a question regarding like multicast and like maybe like it's not that basically like a lot of people like it's not just like an application isn't hosted on a single ship. You don't have like a strong order guarantees because it's something more like secure scuttlebutt or something like that. But sort of like gossip plus like DHT or whatever, which like isn't really like in the immediate purview of like Tlon's focus, but like there is basically like seemed to be like general affirmation that like something like that would be cool on Earth. It just like hasn't really been done. Like similarly with like a blockchain, those would both probably be new veins. Like they wouldn't probably be Gall apps. Maybe they would. I don't know. But like, I mean, it'd definitely be something interesting on Urbit.
Agreed. Cool. All right, Christian, you ready?
Yes. So unfortunately, I don't have like it in like current working order. I did have like the events and the event reducer working, but like I've like started like messing with the types and stuff to start calls and sends working. But I have a picture right here of it working. Like you can actually see here, like this is like a map. Actually, I think it might be better if I showed you over here. Hopefully my ship isn't banging too much. No, it's moving. Yeah, I've been working on some developer tools for Ethereum. I posted it here. So here we have a map. It's like a of And so like if I had multiple like ERC20 tokens, there would be like multiple things like of this shape with like the address and the balance and the transaction log. But this is just basically a store that I've produced like with like the events from just ERC20 transfer events. And I could straightforwardly handle the allowance as well. I just haven't really done that. But the way that I've done that is before, like you had to like manually encode like when you, for example, were making a contract call, you had to manually encode the arguments into like bytecode. When you went to subscribe, you had to manually encode all of the topics that you're subscribing on, which are like the parts of the event that are queryable. So, for example, transfer, you've got like the to, the from, the value, the to and the from are topics. And then when you get any event back, you have to manually parse the topic to even figure out what event it is. Or you have to parse like the first topic to figure out what event it is, to then figure out how you are supposed to decode then like the latter two arguments, or the remaining topics, and then the data associated with the event, which is all quite like laborsome from a sort of developer, like especially like if like anybody is like worked with like Web3.js or like Ethers.js or something like that. Like you plug in the ABI and you plug in the address and you get an object that has like all of the methods for all the calls. And I think maybe like, and then I think maybe you still kind of have to like encode like the event subscriptions, but they have like nice tools for that. And then like when you get the events come in, they're just automatically into like a JavaScript object like in your handler, and it's like very smooth, and we don't currently have that. And so I've produced this this horror. It's utter horror. Like, I mean, this is I like this is like should hardly be done under any circumstances in Urbit. I'm manually generating Hoon. The main reason why I can't take advantage of like Urbit's like metaprogramming stuff is like the one thing that like you can't really do is like dynamically assign faces like from by using like forward runes basically. Like maybe if like we could do that, like you could take like evaluate some Hoon, get a string, and then use a forward rune to like then like put faces on and structure. I think I could make it work then. Which like I like have like maybe like long-term interest in helping do, but I want to start writing Ethereum like applications. So I did this. And so I won't go through all of this, but it's like not the most fun to maintain, I confess. It's like because you have to like you change things in one place, you have to like change it in like 3 other places. But when it's done, and it ends up generating stuff that looks like this. So like this actually isn't current, like I've modified it quite a bit. But it's mostly the same. I think I've just separated actually no, it is about the same kind of. Yeah, there's a little bit of changes. But anyway, so we create so it most like the watcher side basically is the same exact interface like ETH watcher. Like the watch config is like this watch config builder I have right here is like almost the same as the ETH watcher. Excuse me, sorry. I should have had this one pulled up, but I didn't. That's down here. So this is almost the same as like the ETH watch config. Just like plug it in. So it generates these structures, which then namely like this is what is what is like not sort of which like is generated from the ABI. And we can see here that it's got like, these are the different methods on the contract that are like mutations, like you write, like they're transactions. These are the read-only. These are the responses for calls, or these are the responses for the transactions, like the response types, like the return value, and these are the return value for the call types. This is for, This one is for event updates, which is like basically like the events that we're getting from ETHWatcher. And then this is like for like subscribing. And so we don't have like a third, value here because this only has 2 topics. Value is not indexed, so it's not a topic. And so what it ends up looking like that part at least, is ERC20 store. So it ends up actually working pretty nicely. I end up doing some like weird, interesting things that like aren't normally done in Gall apps, like poke as and watch as. And so like since I'm like generating these types, then I also generate marks. I should show you the marks that I generate. Right here and right here. So, oh yeah, that actually reminds me. I also generate this, which then is like, encode, like basically for like the event subscribe, for example, it's like I have to encode that into like encoded topics. And so I'm generating the encoding, and then I reference that in the mark. And so this is like encode poke. And then over here, we've got this is a GIF poke. So then like we grow it into an ETHWatcher poke with like that encode poke that we got from this generated library right here. And then when we go to use it, we can then do, we can do poke as. And so we do poke as, which allows us to basically say, this is like the mark of the vase that we're sending out, where the vase is right here. So we've got like this topics, and so we're saying transfer wild card for 2, and then the address for, which is in my state. I probably should have gone through that, but maybe it'd be too much. Address is like the address for the private key that I have stored in my application. And so what's nice about this is like statically typed. So if I get this like wrong, like add something else, it won't compile because I generated the static types. And so like the topics like will only match up for like the valid topic subscriptions on that contract, because it's a poke ERC20. That's, and this ERC20 is like what was generated over here. And so yeah, I use the poke as down here, and so it says like ETH contracts ERC20 poke, but then poke as ETHWatcher poke because I'm ultimately sending it to ETHWatcher. Which I have ETHWatch, which is like I've kind of stripped it down a little bit just to get quicker updates. Don't worry about that. And And then, so like the way that this works, I do poke as ETH watcher poke, ETH contracts ERC20 poke, go over here, right here. Then, here. Then we grow it into an ETH watcher poke. See, this is the ETH contracts ERC20 poke, ETH contracts ERC20 poke. And then that tells it to grab this, use this arm to grow it, and that encodes the poke, and then it's in like the format that ETH watcher has. This is a big difference. This is like a huge simplification because I did have like a wrapper app around ETH watcher, and I realized that it's like duplicating a lot of functionality of like ETH watcher, and I was like, why don't I just like generate marks that like convert it, and then I just use poke as and watch as. That works great. So similarly with like the watch, like with ETH watcher, you have to poke it to give it like to initialize it, or to like give it the config, and then you send it a watch, so you start receiving gifts on it. So the poke configures the watch, and then the watch like actually like does the subscribing. And so the poke is what contains like all of this information, URL, what are the topics, what are the contracts. And then the watch is just what subscribes along the path to receive it. And then like with the on agent, then so I'm doing watch as. And so when it gives pokes, or when it gives gifts as ETH, as an ETH watcher diff. But then I'm saying watch as ETH contracts ERC20 gift. And so over here, grab from ETH watcher, it uses this decode get diff, which I generated over here. This does like the decoding. This is like automatically generated code, and it does the decoding of the log. So then it can be like typecasted to this like statically typed event that we can then use hep on over back over here. And so I haven't really done anything with approval yet, but we do like we have this like apply event, and it returns the state. What hep, for people who don't know Hoon, is like a switch case. On approval, we don't do anything because it doesn't really matter. But for all of this, then it's like, it's just like you would be like in a lot, like to give some context, like the graph is like something that a lot of people use. It like subscribes to Ethereum events, and then people use that to build up like pieces of state from like blockchain events. Namely, for data you can't like directly query from the blockchain, or at least can't do that cheaply or affordably. It would require too many like RPC requests each time, whatever. And that's all deployed in a centralized server. But like this is like effectively the same thing, where I'm just like matching on the events and reducing them. And like this is just, I can go through like the details of this logic, but it's just like, oh, it's like to me, so I add, oh, it's from me, so I subtract, blah, blah. And like put it in like the appropriate map, because I have like multiple ERC20 tokens. I find this like far more like persuasive than things like the graph, namely because it's like that maybe one day, they eventually get like the token that people are staking, whatever, but like, still, it's like some proof of stake network. What if you just like ran your own machine, and you could like run your own Ethereum node, or connect to like a highly trusted Ethereum node or whatever, and like build up the state on your own machine. And it's like complete, and you're also not downloading like random like Web3.js like JavaScript into your browser, like it's like running on your Urbit, like the application is running on your Urbit. And like when you connect with like HTTP, it's just sending pokes to your Urbit, and it's like getting the information from your Urbit, not from some like trusted centralized like party that's providing like data availability services.
Mhm.
Yeah, like I will hurry and finish. There's also like the rights that I'm working on. I'm doing that with like threads, but I like threads are hard to explain. And I've already taken up so much time. But like here, it's proof that it's being started. This
I'm
is
happy to
for
hear about
like
it. Don't feel bad about taking up time. Like, this is fascinating. So
well, so like what I'm doing here is just like similarly, I have to do like I have to like encode the poke and then the response I have to decode. And so like there's actually no threads that have been written yet for forward. And so I'm having to write a few like thread builders that use forward, but I just need the forward for the cast, which is like basically what the poke as and the watch as does, except the fact that it doesn't like exactly like it doesn't, it's not going to work like that in threads. Like I need to just use forward to cast between different marks.
what's a thread?
Thread. So threads, like they are like this. They're an async IO monad. Yeah, that really helps. So if like you get a poke, right, or something like, and you have to do like a multi-step process. Like you have to like subscribe to this one thing, like listen to like events for like this long, maybe this many events, whatever. And you have to like poke something else, write this to Clay, build this other thing, whatever, all these different things. It's like it's like multi-step process, like then like you've got to keep in your state like memory of like where and like what process like you are, so like when you get like a gift back or something, like like the context in which it's being received, so you can keep moving forward in this asynchronous process, which is like very hellish, like if it's like a sufficiently like complex chain of tasks. And so threads just like basically like you use this like this Mick-Gall, they use this this Mick-Gall syntax, and it's like basically like it's like a macro that allows you to just like tie in like threads together. So it's like, and Spider runs it. And so Spider, like when you like start a thread, you like you poke Spider to tell it to start this thread. And like the Spider keeps the thread, and when a thread pokes or watches or whatever, it adds like the thread ID, which usually has like some entropy in it. It prepends the thread ID to the path. And so then as like Spider's doing it, the thread is doing it. So the thread does its thing, So then like if like a thread ever sends out cards, like the Spider will like prepend the thread ID. And that way when the thread or the Spider gets like a poke-ack or a watch-ack back, or it gets like a gift like along the path, it can use that like prepended like thread ID as like the first part of the wire that you're getting like the fact on, or like the watch-ack or whatever. Or actually, I don't even know if it does that. It might not prepend. I forget if it prepends or not. I have to like look. I'm like getting I learned like threads a while back. I'm like just now like refamiliarizing myself with them. But like generally, like it just runs through, like whenever Spider gets like a gift or something, it goes through its threads and it passes those cards through all the threads, and the threads can either like be like, this card's not for me, so just keep going, or this card's for me, and then like it basically runs the thread forward as much as it can, and then it might stop, and it like accumulates cards along the way. And so then those cards go back out, and then like the threads like progressed a little bit, like other things like compute, they come back to Spider. Spider takes those cards that go to Spider, runs it through its threads, that moves like the threads forward, and eventually they complete, and that returns to the task that originally requested like that Spider start this thread.
I kind of get it. I hear what you're saying. That's very cool.
It's really quite neat. It's a lot like Haskell's like IO monad, kind of. Yeah, it's in the docs actually. It's got a different name though.
Yeah, David was saying it's an imp. Does that sound familiar?
It's a what?
An imp?
An imp. Yeah, this is okay. Here it's called tap. Or maybe it's Spider that's called tap or something. But imp's a nice name. Maybe like Gollum.
David said the async monad doc is no longer.
Are you thinking...
I've got it open right now.
Maybe the one you're talking about, though.
Are you thinking, Sharpen, of developing a front end like on Etherscan to do those transactional writings?
Yeah, I want to do that. There's, so one thing is like, I've kind of, so the other thing that I should be doing, which like now that I'm writing threads again, like I'll actually be able to do it, is, where is it? Basically integrate, this is something that somebody else, what's his name again? Ben Bisrantem has been working on. And this is just using like generic events. Or generic, like it's using ABI, but it's not like statically typed per contract. Like it's statically typed like generically. Which is useful for some cases, like a generic event viewer, but is like not good for other things, right? And we definitely want the generic, and it's really good that we also have this. The thing would be to add the thing to add to this would be the Etherscan. Like add, I'm still screen sharing, right?
Yeah.
The
You see the events, maybe?
There's no events on this one, I don't think.
On the specific transactions, you can see them.
Oh, yeah, probably. But anyway, so it would be this, and
that. Oh.
Totally. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like, it should be pretty easy once like I'm sort of comfortable writing threads.
Pretty easy.
See, I remember like I read through like strand.hoon, like, and what I actually had to do is, since like Mick Gall was not documented, I had to look to the compiler to find what
it did,
what runes it desugared to. And so then like I wrote it out kind of like with like the PQRS that like the runes are documented in, and then I started looking at some examples, and I was like looking at it for a really long time, and then like I finally started figuring it out.
awesome.
It's very impressive.
Okay,
Good work,
so
man.
questions? Mehir, go for it.
Can I have a high level overview of what the project is? Because I mean it I didn't catch much of it because I lack the technical knowledge too. But yeah, I just want to
I mean, I would just look
50
at
foot
it as
overview.
like Web3.js, but for Hoon.
Yeah.
Like the major thing that like, so like I would say there's like, for like Ethereum development to like be made easier, I think that there's like essentially like they're like two useful things. One is like this static type generation. And the reason why that's useful is like, have you used like Web3.js or Ethers.js before, Meyer?
Mhm.
Okay, so we've got so like like when you plug in the ABI and you plug in the like address, you get like an object, right? That's got like all the methods. So like Urbit doesn't work like exactly like that because like the effect model is totally different than is like it's got similarities actually, but it is generally like quite different from JavaScript. And so you don't really like you don't call anything async. What you do is you return a card that gets passed into like maybe like in this case it'll get passed to Iris, which is a vein that handles is an HTTP client, so to do JSON RPC calls. And so I'm returning a card. So like I poke my application. I'm like, hey, send this ERC20 token to that person. That can be like a human readable like Ethereum wallet specific action. But then when that gets poked, that then gets turned into another poke that's like, goes to Iris or whatever. Like, I mean, I'm kind of being very reductive here, but like you return a card that then starts like the initiative of producing it. And then you receive the result as like a gift later. If you kind of see, that's kind of like Urbit's execution model is like everything takes like a call, like, you can look at like every like Urbit application as a function that takes current state and a current effect and outputs resulting state and then a set of effects or a list of effects. And those effects could be to itself. It could be to like other Urbit applications, but they're like the basic ARC model, which are also what are fed in as like inputs to all of the which are fed in as like you take the effects that feed into applications. So they're both the output and the input. And so like what I'm doing here is I'm basically like creating types so that like these outputs can be statically typed. So that it's like you can't call like a function which doesn't exist. I mean, if you've got like a fallback function where you're doing fancy stuff, then like you wouldn't be using this to begin with because like that's very non-standard. Like that's not something that you generate from an ABI anyway. That's like additional infrastructure. And so then also you want the responses to be statically typed as well. But you also want them like to the encoding and the decoding to be automated as well, which is what the mark conversion there does. I would say like the other thing that might so does that sort of picture sort of make a bit more sense?
So I'm visualizing this as essentially like some kind of library in Hoon. So if I want to write a program that interacts with Ethereum contracts, I'll use your library and I'll be able to interact with Ethereum contracts. That's the high level.
Yeah, it's a high level. Like the major thing is like the static types. Like we can already interact with Ethereum contracts. Just you have to like manually encode the data points, which means like you need to like know like as like a developer like what like you need to like manually specify the types. It's like the interface is like I can actually just show you. So like the major difference is like so this is the azimuth events. We have like you know how like events are like the first topic is like the catch-at hash of like the event name and the types. So all these are hard coded for azimuth. And so for like the contracts that Urbit needs to function, it's hard coding all of the arguments or all of the events. And then you see over here, owner changed, we're like manually specifying like the types that are being used to decode the encoded topics, you know. Yeah. And that's like very like that's what I'm trying to automate away basically.
It's a generic tool. Yeah. Christian, so I noticed the node that you're using is a local node. Did you say that you put the private key into the app, or is it living on the node? It's in your local node, your local Ethereum node, that is.
Right now, the private key is on the app, mostly because I haven't like bothered to play around with like unlocking or locking. But like, I think there's like a wide range of possibilities here. Like another thing would be like having like, if like there's like somebody's hosting, maybe somebody just wants to sign transactions from their MetaMask, you know, if like because they don't want to store it on a host. But then maybe like, yeah, like they're hosting it themselves and they're also willing to host their own Ethereum node. And then like the private key can be on the Ethereum node. I just haven't like worked yet with like that. I'm like, I'm sure I could figure it out. It's just, there's already infrastructure for turning private keys into addresses. And so it's just to get moving. Like I just put the private key on the node on my Urbit ship itself.
Yeah, and I would assume also that after the security audit, maybe we feel more comfortable with private keys in apps / Urbit themselves, and that maybe Dalten specifically could host an Ethereum node for which people could, send transactions to pre-signed, and then we would, put them on chain for people as a service.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. Maybe actually, I've had like a question. Like, I wonder if maybe like Maher might know better than I do. But so there's like, in Urbit, the Ethereum node is always like about 5 minutes behind, like 30 blocks to be precise. And the reason why is like 30 blocks is like what they've chose is like, okay, probably not going to have reorgs at that level. And so they then do like the get by range, which like I don't know the details. I haven't looked at like every like JSON RPC to figure out if there's like a way around this, but like they don't give you like the information about like parent hashes or something or another. And so you can't detect reorgs with that by range. And so like you have to get like the blocks like one by one to be able to detect reorgs. But then that would blow up the like Ethereum or inferior node or whatever that Talon has because everybody in the network is supposed to be using it. And so like what I'm wondering is like if we want like kind of like to provide like more like sort of like snappy, like not like 5 minutes behind like Ethereum apps on Urbit, then does like it make sense to provide basically like Ethereum node like uptime as like a service, maybe as like the Dalten Collective or something.
So what's the question in there? Like, what does it take to make something like that happen?
Well, the question is kind of like for like a very snappy Web3 like application, like is sort of the like I guess there's like multiple questions. Like one is like I haven't like pursued this question like very well yet. like because of like I'm busy with other things, but is like is there like not a way to like detect reorgs and be like very up to date that's like not also like very costly in terms of like many JSON RPC requests? And like if that's the case, then like does that mean that maybe like providing Ethereum node uptime like is like a valuable service that could be provided for Urbit ships?
Well, I don't have a ton of experience here, but when I was at Maker, we did run a lot of our own infrastructure. And I don't know specifically how it worked in terms of if it was a fallback or if it was a primary source. But yeah, in terms of snappiness, a lot of you wasn't waiting 30 transactions before it would show something to the user interface over a web app. Like if you went to Oasis or voting on Maker, all that stuff, it was pretty quick. Like it's pretty snappy. But that could also be it might depend on your particular application, which is like if you're moving. If it's high value type stuff, maybe you actually do want a bit of reorganization protection. But if it's not, then maybe you just assume that it will probably work, and for the most part, that's fine. I don't know, Meher, have you built some web interfaces on top of blockchain data, and what does it look like in terms of latency?
I don't have experience with this because we've only built for these proof of stake networks that are not Ethereum. And they're mostly strongly consistent chains. So block is produced, it cannot be reverted. So
well, ETH is moving in that direction. So wait 4 months, 6 months, and we'll be kind of in that realm. Okay. But specifically, Christian, if you're going to dive in and kind of go down that rabbit hole, the Ethereum 2.0 testnet is live, so you can kind of see what it looks like.
Yeah, I'm gonna save the effort for now, I think.
Sure, but it's good to know that once we move to proof of stake, then it's going to be.
But
quick.
like my impression is this is like there's like the whole phase thing, and this is like phase 0, and so it's like basically they just have kind of like a very simple like I think it's actually like effectively like the same as like the live peer airdrop. Kind of. So I think they're still like a long way away, and like I would personally save like my effort, unless like I guess like maybe for Meyer it's like that's his like business model, so like being like maybe privy to like ETH 2.0 development like would make sense to be able to best front run it, but I don't know.
why does Tlon provide an ETH node? Why is an Infura ETH node not enough?
It is. That's what it's providing, is an Infura node.
So what does Tlon have to do here?
Talon, so like you see in Sarpin's code there, the node URL line 15, right? So that is the Infura nodes are also encoded, or they're defined like that in Hoon. So when you build your ETH watcher, that's the code that currently looks for Azimuth smart contract changes, and it uses in a node that's procured by right there. That's procured by Talon. I think you can configure that on boot, meaning like I think there's a flag for an Ethereum endpoint if you don't want to use it. But this is the one that's provided by default. But if that one goes down, then basically any changes in ownership or breaches or anything like that won't work.
Yeah.
Right.
Good to know, right? Like single point of failure. Like we should probably do something about that.
And that's like basically like the thrust of like my point is like if it's the case that providing snappy Ethereum applications like requires having like a node which can like take like that, or which requires a node that can take like the heat, then it probably makes sense for stars to run Ethereum nodes and for planets to connect to their stars Ethereum nodes.
Mhm.
You know, and if we can like make that argument really well, that gives like Dalton as like a star a good competitive edge.
Yep. I agree.
Hmm.
Well, for maybe advancing that thought a little bit more, let's see. So there are a bunch of boxes out there that you can sort of buy off the shelf that do ETH nodes, like Avato and DApp node. Maybe it might be worth putting I don't know. I don't think they're very expensive. Maybe a couple $100 might be worth buying one of those things and hooking it up and see if we can keep it online.
Yeah, definitely. We could also maybe run it on a VPS as well. I mean, it might be like, yeah, because like I mean, I think like getting like, it's like if like we could like do the DevOps infrastructure, like like got like a star and you've got like your ETH node and like you can like put it together and like it's quick and easy. That's also kind of useful to have.
So I'll take that as an action. I'll look into what it would take to host a node.
Yeah, and like whichever way. I mean, if that sort of box or device or on a VPS or
I'll just come back to the group with whatever I find.
Yeah. The thing that I'm thinking that might be a bit tricky is like you'd probably like want to like wrap like I don't know if like Ethereum nodes like come with this or like if Tempura has like some open source stuff for this, but basically just like API key or something to that effect. And like some like namely in a way that like maybe like Urbit can like Urbit or like listening to like Azimuth or like listening to like contracts for like Dalton Star membership or something like can like modify like the key and like essentially like modify like whether or not people have like API endpoint access.
Yeah, or maybe so in this case, maybe a very small app that has some sort of permissions that can actually connect to the node itself. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Right. I mean, like the sort of like quickest, cheapest way that I can kind of imagine doing this would be like just having like a node application that just like proxies, but with like session with like API key authentication to like the local running ETH node, and then like also like expose like a local API point that your Urbit can talk to configure like the like API key like authentication.
Yeah, I get you. We don't want it open to the whole world.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think like, it's not hard to run an Ethereum node, like you're just, and like, but a lot of people like don't want to do that. And so like pay for the convenience. And I mean, I find that completely justified.
Cool. Yeah, I'll look into that. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, we've been running for almost 90 minutes, so thanks everybody for the cool hangout today. And so does the hackathon end on Monday?
Monday. Yep.
Okay. And what will what does that process look like? What will we hear anything back, or like how do we know what happened?
Well, they're doing the star giveaway for it, so there must be some feedback on it. I think there's one top level prize of like 8 stars or something, and then 2 second prizes of like 4, and then 3 of 2 or something like that. There's like a total of 20 stars or something to that effect being given away. So it's a lot of
That's serious.
valuable real estate. Yeah.
Cool. All right, maybe we'll add to the constellation, so to speak.
That'd be sweet.
Okay. All right, I think that's a good place to end it. So thanks everybody for showing up and putting up with some headaches, technical headaches and such. But yeah, we'll see you all next week.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.